Now, Anna Burke from the Labor Party made an observation here that I think it's been shared by a lot of people, certainly a lot of letter writers into the newspapers. Here she is.
I've received thousands of emails about cows and sheep and the terrible treatment of that. I haven't received thousands of emails concerned about people getting onto leaky boats and drowning. So I just find it a funny debate where people don't get things into, I suppose, the perspective I would have on them.
How do you explain that?
What are we talking about here? Are we talking about the wreck at Christmas Island? Are we talking about, or are we talking about the shipping of people to Malaysia? There's a lot of shipping going on with the refugee issue at the moment. Just on the wreck on Christmas Island, what we know already from the coronial inquiry in Perth is that that voyage represented everything that is abominable about the people smuggling trade. It was ghastly. But there are questions about the Australian response to that wreck that have to be answered at that inquiry, and they are potentially dreadful questions. Why did it take between an hour and a quarter and an hour and a half from the first calls for help for an Australian ship to come around the point and give some assistance to this? Now, this is a very live issue about the wreck and how that terrible thing happened. And of course, it's dangerous to come by sea.
Yeah, and of course,
it's better to come any other way than by sea. But refugees all over the world travel by sea. Australians seem to have a great deal of difficulty understanding that refugees travel by land when they can, by air when they can, by sea when they have to. This is how it happens. And you'd wish it would happen otherwise. But the reality is that it's how it happens.
But isn't one of the lessons, though, that governments should put in place as many policies as possible to discourage people from doing it?
And they do. I mean, Australia is hard at work in Indonesia, hard at work in many places, discouraging that trade, trying to disrupt the trade. We have AFP, we have ACES, we have Australian officials all through Indonesia trying to disrupt that trade. It's not as though we're sitting here saying, come on down, fellas. That completely misrepresents the situation. Australia is not passive in trying to disrupt and halt that trade.
But isn't some of the lesson also that whatever you do to be effective to stop the boats, if that's your policy goal, if that's what you really want to do, if you're not going to argue to the Australian people, listen, the number of boats that are coming isn't really that big a problem, we can handle it, which neither of the major parties is prepared to do. If you're going to stop the boats, there are going to be consequences, human rights consequences, whichever way you do it, which you have to handle and which you have to actually own up to. Whether you do the Malaysian solution or the Nauru solution, we're weighing up a series of bad options from a human rights point of view, whichever way we turn. And I think politicians should be kind of open and honest about that with people, that we're looking at least worst options here, we're not looking at good options.
And that's why presumably the deal will be done with Malaysia sometime this week, and human rights will have to be a part of that, surely. There'll have to be something there underpinning the treatment of the people when they get back to Malaysia, or when they go to Malaysia.
That means that those people we return will not be seen as illegal immigrants, so the government can say, well, then they won't suffer the worst abuses that people suffer in that circumstance in Malaysia. But it has to be a form of words, of course, that plays to the political realities in both countries, which is why it's taking such a long time.
But even so, I mean, you can have as many words as you like on as many bits of paper as you like, but how do you guarantee that they're actually going to be followed through? How do you ensure that none of these people are going to be mistreated? They say none of them will be caned. How do we know that?
Well, there will be oversight. I think they've already indicated there will be some sort of Australian government oversight when these people are taken to Malaysia.
For a long time, Barry. We're not just talking about, 6 months or 9 months. They're deliberately being placed at the end of a very, very long queue. And how they're going to be looked after over the years that they will be there, years in which they're not going to be allowed to work, years in which I think we've undertaken that their kids are going to be educated, unlike other asylum seekers in Malaysia. This is an extraordinary proposition, and we are to take comfort as a nation. We're to take comfort from the fact that they're not going to be caned.